Hello everyone, Danielle here again. Welcome back to my channel. So today is actually a video covering some stuff that might be up and coming on my channel. First of all, I actually do want to do some type of a Q&A video eventually on this channel. So if you guys have any good questions to ask me in the comments below, don't be shy to ask me any questions related to The Flash or Arrow or anything from like DC Comics, and I'll try to answer them the best I can, because like I said in previous videos, I am not a huge comic book expert. Most of my comic book knowledge comes from several YouTubers here on YouTube, including Emergency Awesome, Pagey, and Nerdgasm. So I'm not a complete expert on comics, but I will try to answer some of your questions the best that I can to my possible ability. And in addition to that, today's video, I actually think is going to be on my favorite villains from the DC TV. And that's going to be including Flash, Arrow, and DC's Legends of Tomorrow. Because DC's Legends, I actually loved the first season, but I didn't finish up the second season, so I'm going to eventually finish up watching the second season of Legends. But Supergirl, I didn't really get too far into. I only got a little bit halfway into season 1. I have to watch Supergirl again for sure. And as far as like other stuff in DC TV, I do not watch Lucifer and I do not watch Gotham. Those are actually like Gotham, I tried watching like the first episode, and while I loved the concept of it, telling it the story of like Gotham City and like Bruce Wayne's parents getting killed and everything like that from like the first season and the way how it's set up, I do love the concept of it, but it's going to take me a while to get into like everything about it because it's very dark, and Arrow is just about as dark as I went. You know, I think the darkest show that I ever got into watching was actually yesterday. I actually started watching From Dusk Till Dawn, and if you guys want to check it out, it's on Netflix, and so far I watched the first episode. The setup of it, it's kind of interesting, but I don't know if it's my favorite. I have to continue with it, or see if I'm going to continue with it. But in addition to that, there are like several other shows I'm starting to get into now, like iZombie. I'm really starting to get into. I like iZombie. I'm gonna try and get into Supernatural, and there's also another show on Netflix called Video Game High School, and it's like totally something that I could potentially love watching. And in addition to that, I also am trying to get into Stranger Things as well. I watched the first episode of Stranger Things, but I don't know if I entirely like it. I think I have to rewatch the first episode of Stranger Things. But now I'm going to get into my favorite villains from DC and DC Comics and all sorts of fun stuff. So I do have to say that like my top favorite that was ever featured would have to be on The Flash. My favorite villain that was ever featured on The Flash would have to be Zoom. I loved Zoom. Zoom was really something else. He wasn't even like human. He was this complete monster. That's what he was. Like, I wouldn't even consider him like pronouns. I'm just gonna call him it. Like, that thing was just so freaking terrifying. Like, everything about it with Zoom, it was just, oh my god. Like, it was the craziest thing. Like, kidnapping Jay Garrick, played by John Wesley Shippen, taking on his identity and playing the hero to give people hope and then taking it away from people as Zoom. You know, there's just nothing that you could ever do to apologize for something like that. Like, Zoom, you know, you do have to sometimes kind of feel bad for it because it did, like, lose his mother with his father killing his mother, like, right in front of him. But still, that doesn't excuse anything they did. And then essentially ripping Henry Allen's life away from him in the season finale because Henry Allen is like one of my favorite characters ever featured on The Flash. Henry Allen's death like really hurt my feelings. Like, that was breaking my heart. But the thing about Zoom that I think that I love the most, that I find the most fascinating about Zoom, is the fact that this character has like deep psychological issues, and Teddy Sears knocked it out of the park with him, and I actually did enjoy Zoom. Zoom, I feel like, was a much better villain than Savitar. Savitar, the reveal for Savitar and everything, the way how it was set up, it just got messy, it was very rushed, and I didn't really enjoy Savitar's reveal being a future version of Barry Allen, because everybody predicted that that was going to be the case. So I was like, no, Savitar's not really my favorite villain. He's not really my favorite villain. I'm sorry, but Savitar is not really on my top, like, list of, like, villains that I like. He was an okay villain, but Zoom was scarier. Zoom was a lot scarier. Like, when he broke Barry Allen's back, that also kind of broke my heart, too. Seeing him, like, beating the living crap out of Barry, that was, like, really, really terrifying to watch, and it was, like, sickening to watch. Like, it really, really, really broke my heart and hurt my feelings when that took place. And now moving into my next favorite villain, Prometheus. Prometheus from Arrow this past season was spectacular. I loved Adrian Chase, Prometheus. Josh Segarra as Prometheus was just incredible. I loved Josh Segarra as Prometheus. He was such a better villain than Damien Dark. Even though Damien Dark was, like, freaky and stuff like that, Prometheus, the way how he, like, everything was set up, it was, like, set up to the T. It was set up to perfection, with the fact that he had a total of, like, 5 whole years planning this, and then he, like, started to execute it in season 5. And the way how he executed it in season 5 was, like, going to Talia al Ghul and having her train him. And in addition to that, like, the way how everything was just set up, having him tell Oliver, you infect everything you touch. You are poisonous to everybody that's in your life. You infect everybody that you touch. Everything you touch dies. Like, the way how everything was set up for that, especially in the episode Capuchin, I believe it's called. Yeah, Capuchin. The way how he tortured Oliver like that and essentially broke him, telling Oliver, you don't kill people because you have to. And then Oliver, like, ended it with screaming in his face, being like, I wanted to! And I liked it! Like, the way how that episode was written, the way how it was done, it was very well done. And I do have to say that, like, the way how Adrian Chase finished off the finale, ending it with literally a bang, and blowing up all of Lian Yu in front of Oliver and his son, that was, like, probably the most intense season finale that we could have ever gotten from Arrow. So I actually did enjoy the Arrow season 5 finale because of Adrian Chase. Like, he made the whole entire episode feel like an action-packed movie. So I do have to say that Adrian Chase was, like, the best villain from Arrow, I have to say. Like, I love Adrian Chase. And next villain that I love, well, not really a villain, he's more of an anti-hero. Let me think about it. Like, the villain that I liked, that I actually really do like, that's more of an anti-hero, is Captain Cold. And Captain Cold from Flash is, like, one of the best villains from DC Comics because he has the cold gun and everything like that, which is the opposite of what the Flash can do. He's similar to Mr. Freeze, who is one of Batman's villains, and I do have to say that Captain Cold, Wentworth Miller's performance of him is probably my favorite, just because the way how they set him up, and the way how he's set up in the comics too, is that he's not really a villain. He's more of an anti-hero and a thorn to Barry Allen's side. So I do have to say that Captain Cold is, like, right up there with one of my favorite villains, because it's just, everything about him is just so cool with his cold gun and everything like that. But I do have to say that my favorite episode that he was featured in was actually in that one season 1 episode where him and Barry are having that moment in the woods together, and Barry's like telling him, you know, I know Cisco told you, you know, I know that Cisco told you that he knows who I am. And Captain Cold is like, well, you or his brother, I put him between a rock and a hard place. And he's like, what to do with me now, Barry Allen? And Barry's like, you know, I could just speed you away to my private prison or you'll never see the light of day. And the way how Captain Cold is that despite the fact that he knows Barry's secret and will continue to know Barry's secret, the fact that he didn't tell any of his rogues, or the fact that he didn't tell his sister or McRory Barry's secret, is really something else. You know what I mean? Like, it's really something, considering. Like, it shows that even though he is a villain, he is much more of an anti-hero, and he still has a little bit of that integrity still in him. Like, he still has a little bit of integrity, I do have to say. But, like, the integrity in him is that he's a villain that doesn't kill. Like, he just has a line that he won't cross. Like, he doesn't believe in killing or hurting civilians to get what he wants. Like, he just doesn't believe in that. So I actually do like Captain Cold for that reason, because there's still a little bit of that humanity left in him. You know, he's not a total sociopath, which is actually very, very interesting to me. Another villain that I personally loved was actually, let me think about it. One other villain I actually did love was Eobard Thawne, Harrison Wells from season 1 of Flash. I do have to say that that was probably one of my favorite villains that was featured on Flash, hands down. I loved how everything was set up with Eobard Thawne, and then it ended with a bang with Eddie committing suicide to save Barry and save Team Flash. So I do have to say that the whole setup with Eobard Thawne, the way how everything was set up with him taking on Harrison Wells' appearance and essentially becoming Harrison Wells, becoming something else, just to create the particle accelerator that would make Barry Allen into the Flash. But at the same time, this is also a villain, keep in mind, that ruined Barry's life completely by killing his mother. And I think that a storyline that can actually be really good on the show is actually Barry coming to a realization that the original timeline before Eobard Thawne, you know, stuck himself in the timeline and screwed everything up, could actually be Barry realizing that in that original timeline, before everything got screwed over, that, let me think about it, that Barry will eventually find out that his mom and dad actually lived on to see him become the Flash, in the year 2024. Which, if you think about that, that is just going to be a really, really, really cruel story to tell. Because he's going to be realizing, oh my god, like, my mom was alive in that original timeline. And then Eobard Thawne went in and ruined my whole life for, like, 14, 16 years. So, I do have to say that could be a really interesting story to tell in, like, this upcoming season, I do have to say. But the thing about Eobard Thawne, the way how everything was set up, is that not only was he Barry's, like, worst enemy, but he was also Barry's protector in some sick way. So, you do have to appreciate that. You do have to appreciate the fact that despite the fact of all the horrible things that he did, the fact that he even, like, believes that Barry, Caitlin, Cisco, that all their lives are so much better because of him. The fact is that, in a way, despite the fact that he was a sociopath and he was somebody that ruined Barry's life, he was also Barry's protector, in a sense. So that's actually a really, like, interesting relationship to see the bad guy teach the hero how to be a better good guy. So I do have to say that that's, like, actually a really interesting dynamic to see the bad guy teaching the good guy how to be a better good guy. That was also similar to Hunter Zolomon disguising himself as Jay Garrick and essentially teaching Barry how to be a better hero, how to be a better good guy. So Eobard Thawne and Zoom, they both had their own similarities to that as far as everything goes. Eobard and Zoom are probably the most similar in terms of, like, their motives and what they are capable of. Now, another personal favorite of mine from Arrow that, like, recurs and keeps popping up, let me think about it. Like, what other villains from Arrow did I love? With Arrow, you know, Prometheus was my top favorite villain. But I do have to say, Season 2 Slade Wilson and the Mirakuru Soldiers, that was another really, really good one. I loved seeing, like, the flashbacks of Slade Wilson essentially getting injected with the Mirakuru from, like, Anthony Ivo, I believe it was. And he essentially became insane with the Mirakuru, and he betrayed Oliver. Like, he did all of these things, and Oliver feels like this responsibility to, in a way, try and save Slade's soul, in a sense. Like, I feel like that's what Oliver was trying to do, in a way. He was trying to save Slade's soul. But in addition to that, another thing with Oliver that you could see with that was the fact that because of Slade, he and Roy developed that dynamic between the two of them of Arsenal and the Green Arrow. And I do have to say that after Roy got injected with the Mirakuru, Oliver, instead of putting him down, actually offered to train him and offered to teach Roy how to be better. And, like, Slade made Roy that way, so it wasn't like Roy was asking to be injected with that drug. So the thing is that with Slade, it's just a lot of good things happened in Season 2. A lot of brilliant things happened. You know, with Sarah Lance coming back from the dead, and essentially, like, we learned about Sarah, we learned about so much that season, and we learned so much, I believe, from Season 2 of Arrow. I just loved Season 2 of Arrow, and it showed, like, more of that Oliver-Roy dynamic that a lot of people loved. And I personally want to see Colton Haynes come back to Arrow. I want to see Roy again, for sure. I love Roy Harper, I do have to say. So, if they could, like, bring Roy back for a season or so, I would love that, because Roy, essentially, is one of my favorite characters. And I actually remembered reading the Rise of Arsenal comic where he learns about the death of his daughter, Leanne. And I just remembered reading that, and that, like, really broke my heart when he found out about his daughter being killed. So I feel if they do Leanne Harper, then I would personally, like, love to see her as, like, a 7-year-old. But then if they end up doing that whole storyline with her getting killed, with having a building toppled on top of her, then that would be honestly breaking my heart all over again. So I feel like if they could, like, do it differently and have her as a teenager rather than a 7-year-old, I would actually enjoy that. But Slade Wilson, you know, he was the one that introduced the whole thing with the Mirakuru, and he brought on the Roy and Oliver dynamic, and everything about him was, like, just planned out from the get-go, using Sebastian Blood to create the Mirakuru soldiers, using people to create Mirakuru soldiers, and then in the end, like, planning out that whole thing with him befriending Moira Queen, and then ultimately being the one to end her life by stabbing her in the heart with a sword. So I do have to say that as far as, like, Slade Wilson goes, he's definitely one of my personal favorites, because now he's an anti-hero. You know, he's no longer crazy with the Mirakuru, but still, you know, it doesn't change the fact that he used and manipulated so many people into taking that drug and becoming his super soldiers to try and terrorize Starling City. So I do have to say that Slade is, like, right up there. And another personal favorite of mine has got to also be Carrie Hutter. I love Carrie Cutter, Cupid, who was introduced, I believe, during season 3. Yeah, it was season 3. Cupid is definitely a favorite because of the fact that she is like off the wall crazy. She is bat crap crazy. And Cupid, she's like very, 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 very crazy over Oliver. And that's actually from the comic books, like her being so romantically obsessed with Oliver to the point where she's willing to kill anybody just to get his attention. And I think that makes her a very interesting like villain. You know, even though she's not like a big bad, she's still a really good villain, much like Captain Cold. Her and Captain Cold are two of my favorite minor villains from the Arrowverse. And another villain that I personally liked had to be Vandal Savage as well. I liked Vandal Savage during season 1 of Legends of Tomorrow. Vandal Savage was actually a pretty good villain for what it was, because it was a great way to pick up, you know, the Hawkman, Hawkgirl storyline and having them continue over into the Legends of Tomorrow with Ray Palmer, Sarah Lance, and everybody else. So I do have to say that was actually a really, really good choice to bring on Vandal Savage, because I feel like he was the perfect one for like any Time Master. So that, I do have to say, is a really, really good villain. I liked Vandal Savage. The fact that he just couldn't die unless if it was Kendra to kill him. So those are like all my favorite villains from the Arrowverse, I do have to say. Those are like all my favorite Arrowverse villains, because I just feel like they all have their like own extremes and everything like them, but they're so likable that you just want to keep watching to find out what happens. So yeah, I do have to say that that's all I have to say for this video. And remember, I might be doing a Q&A pretty soon, so leave your questions in the comments below, and I will talk to you guys in my next video. Bye, guys.